Now adjust the volume control so that the sound can be heard in all parts of the room.
This is the Protect Your Assets podcast.
You get the idea?
It's on the internet.
Make him the cutest that I've ever seen.
Go on.
Give him two lips like
It's like no cheese I've ever tasted.
tell him that his love
Here's the Sandman.
over Sandman.
I want to ask you a question. Is keeping wealth in your family for generations important to you? Ever heard of the third generation curse? No matter how much money you have, passing wealth onto your family is no easy task. So stick with me today as we discuss how to keep wealth in your family. It's all coming up next. So stick around. Good morning. Welcome to Protect Your Assets. I am David Hollander, the Sandman. Monday, it's Memorial Day, so I hope you're going to enjoy your weekend. But as you go through this weekend, think about Memorial Day. It's a day where we're going to honor all those who died in defense of our country, defending us. If you saw Hacksaw Ridge, Saving Private Ryan, or Iwo Jima, you have some idea of what happened. Most of the deaths occurred somewhere else outside of the U.S. Can you imagine for an instant how terrifying it must be to fight a battle? I imagine these soldiers as old and wise, resembling the founding fathers, aged and gray-haired. But the truth of the matter, most of those who died were young men, particularly in the Vietnam conflict. Remember on Monday how they gave up two lives, the one they were living right then and the one they would have lived at home as a husband, father, or grandfather. They gave up everything for our country, for us, for freedom, your freedom. And so remember, freedom is not free. For those of you joining us for the first time, welcome, people around here. Yep, they call me the Sandman. That's because I help my listeners sleep well at night by answering all the trouble that's going on each week. This past week was no different. I run a tax, legal, and financial firm, been doing it for over 30 years. So we talk about those issues each week right here. So this past week, I sat down with Ken and Susan. They have two boys. Ken's a retired engineer, and he managed to accumulate a little over $13 million in retirement accounts, real estate, savings, and stocks and bonds. They both told me that they wanted to make sure their boys received as much of the estate as possible when they both die. They're concerned about the tax law, the big beautiful bill that's coming, and they want to know what they can do right now to make sure their sons and grandkids get as much as possible and not the government. So they want to bring in their estate plan, and I was thrilled that they had a plan that included their house, their cars, their retirement accounts. But after I reviewed those documents, because after all, I am an attorney, it turned out that it was a real mess. In fact, they were looking at some serious taxes and penalties and a long and expensive probate because there were no documents that outlined what they wanted to do. And that's because they were outdated and there were some fundamental parts that were just missing because laws had changed. So that got me thinking about what I would talk about today. And so the bottom line is this couple was only trying to help their kids and grandkids, but in reality, because so much time had passed since they spoke to their attorney, who, by the way, is retired, what they did was create a mess for their kids and grandkids. And they don't want to do that to their family. So stick with me today, the next 45 minutes, as we're going to go over a checklist for what to do to keep wealth in your family. This is important, and listen carefully as we go through this. Go ahead and take notes. Now, let's get started. So stocks, bonds, and the dollar all went down this past week as concerns over U.S. budget deficit and rising debt and fresh tariffs all reminded us that it's not over. The Dow Jones was off 2.5% for the week. S&P off 2.6%, NASDAQ down 2.5%. The MSCI International was up 1%, and the 10-year Treasury went over 4.51%, and the 30-year Treasury went over 5%. Yields are getting attractive again, looking like 2007. Oil closed down $61.73 a barrel. So a lot of people were asking me, what is this big, beautiful bill, and what does it mean for us? So what is the Big Beautiful Bill? The Big Beautiful Bill is the name given to the continuing resolution to fund the government, extend the debt ceiling, and pass a lot of the Republican Trump agenda that's out there right now. What's in it? Well, there's a few things I'll like to highlight. First, extending the 2017 Tax and Jobs Act. All the tax rules, if you pay taxes, you've enjoyed the lower taxes the last few years. This is just going to extend it longer. Second, there's a $50 billion item in there that's going to help build the wall on the southern border, as well as $150 billion increased defense spending for the Golden Dome missile defense system. And there's also an elimination of taxes on tips and overtime work, and help for seniors, as well as raising the state and local tax. It's called the SALT deduction cap from $10,000, where it is now, to $40,000, and that's for those earning under $500,000. It also reduces spending on Medicaid and food stamps and some of the entitlement programs. So why does it matter to the markets? That's what I'm going to cover this morning. Remember, this is not a political show. There's two reasons why this matters for stocks. First, it's important for economic growth because it's going to provide fiscal stimulus through the additional government spending to the economy. And more importantly, it solidifies the tax rates that will be in place for the next few years for consumers. So this will help consumers keep more in their pocket and most likely spend more, and the market always likes that when the consumer's going to spend. But remember, because of the bond market we saw this week, don't count on it boosting growth materially or fueling any kind of rally. And here's why I say that. Because this week we had the 20-year auction, which didn't do too well. And then there became concerns about the overall debt of the U.S. economy. And that's why rates started to rise when you saw the 30-year going over 5%. So let me just talk about that. I don't see the debt situation that's mounting right now to be a near-term threat on the economy. I do believe it's going to require tougher fiscal choices down the road, and so I think you're going to see a combination in the future of tax hikes, spending cuts, or adjustments, more adjustments to entitlement programs like Social Security. Because if you think about it, when the government was running a surplus, remember back in Clinton days between 97 and 2001, the 10-year Treasury, if you go back and look at it, was around 6%. And right now, taxes are currently historically low. Investors who make $250,000 or more in retirement should start to consider proactive tax strategies right now before taxes rise. So currently, I like the 10-plus year maturity area for government bonds right now because yields are attractive. If you have maturing CDs, you have portfolio with an oversized allocation to cash, I would consider intermediate and longer term bonds right now to lock in these higher yields that are here for longer, because in my view, the rise in yield is self-limiting as higher yields attract more demand. They will slow economic activity and inflation, and this should lead the Fed to reconsider rate cuts, like I've been saying, potentially 2 more this year, and could prompt more changes coming from lawmakers, which would pull back on some of the spending initiatives and add offsets. But remember, there is this peak yield theory that's out there right now. I've seen this, again, what does it mean, this peak yields thesis? What it means is when you see the 30-year Treasury over 5% and the 10-year over 4.98, what that is that's testing that theory that if yields were to violate that, meaning go higher, that in itself could gain momentum, and this would be a negative development for stocks overall in the U.S. So these are the things you got to keep your eye on, and if you're looking for some value right now and you're willing to take some risk, then again, take a look at that area I'm talking about. Don't become another Vanderbilt. Find out how the Rockefellers have created wealth into the 7th generation and counting. You're listening to The Sandman. When we come back, we're going to talk about how to keep more of what's yours for generations. You are listening to the Protect Your Assets show. I'll be right back.
Take the first step toward reaching your financial goals and get the information that can help you live a confident retirement. That first step is going to pyaevents.com and signing up for our next free event. That's pyaevents.com. Now, back to Protect Your Assets with David Hollander, the Sandman.
Welcome back. I'm David Hollander, also known around here as the Sandman, and you are listening to Protect Your Assets this morning. If you're just joining us and one of your financial goals is to keep wealth in your family for generations, well, you've tuned into the right channel as we're going over how to keep wealth in your family for multiple generations. So here's the thing. No matter how much money you have, it might be a lot tougher than you think to hold on to it. Have you ever heard of the 3rd generation curse? Go look up what happened to the Vanderbilts. With proper preparation and planning, it can be possible to pass wealth on for generations. Perhaps even more important, it can be possible to help guide future generations on ways to use this wealth prudently even after you are gone. If this sounds like a puzzle, well, and you've been trying to solve it, stick with me today as we're going to discuss multi-generational wealth and how you think about that. All right, so let's get started. To start out with this problem, most clients don't have a will or a trust. So that is a real problem, as you have no roadmap to start if something were to happen. But even if you had a will or have a trust, which is known as an estate plan, that process has a problem, because what it does is it designates someone who's going to receive your assets and handle them upon your disability or death. And if you think about it, that only covers the 1st generation, as the 2nd generation who inherits the estate and typically is the one who ends up squandering it and not thinking about the 3rd generation because they have full control over it. So if you're really after leaving a legacy, you need a written strategy that's designed to equip the 3rd generation and more with information they need to carry out your wishes and desires. It really is that simple. So these documents should have some simple things before you start to create them. And what are they? So let's talk about those this morning. Where would you start making a generational plan, and how would you go about thinking about it if, let's say, you've already done a will and a trust? These are really good questions, and here's where we would start. There are really 3 components you should think about before you begin this conversation with your professional team. So this is something that's going to be more personal to you. You definitely need a professional team to help you create and then implement the plan, and this usually would include a CPA, an attorney, and a financial advisor. Oh, we have all of those at our firm. But in any event, those are the types of people I recommend you work with, because they should know what they're doing and hopefully have experience doing it. So make sure you ask those questions. The first thing you need to do, this is for yourself, is to create the right mindset. Now, what do I mean by that? You need to think past your kids and your grandkids. And I say it this way. I say, think about blurring the faces. You want your goal to reach as far into the future as possible. Almost like Star Trek, when you would beam me up, Scotty, passing through lights and lights and lights, right? Future generations, think about what that might look like, what your family might look like. Think big picture here. Your will is the perfect document to think short term and leave specific items like maybe that fancy car or a ring or a painting that means something. You can use that to leave it to specific people. But generational planning, that's totally different. That's futuristic type stuff. Does that make sense? Next, do your best to put your family values down in writing for those future generations to follow. And this is important. Most of my clients who are self-made will tell you that experiencing what it took to create the wealth is also what helps them keep it and grow it. That what it takes, quote, is not transferable to those who have never created wealth for themselves. So one way to help your future family could be to provide the means in your documents for, say, higher education or skills training, or capital to start up a business or expand a existing business that's doing well, or funds to get involved in charitable causes if those are important to you. Putting your plan down in writing, possibly as part of a family constitution or a set of bylaws in corporate documents, this makes it so much easier to hand it down later. You could build in responsibilities and roles into the document that make it a fiduciary duty, so a legal duty for that person or persons to manage that portfolio and those assets for generations to come, and to do what's best for those future interests and pass on that estate, hopefully in a better condition than it was when they received it. This is where you might go to outside individuals to professionally do that for you. And again, that can be done at certain costs, but that can all be built into the document. That's why you do need to get help and information on this before you implement it. Your goal at this juncture should be to set specific provisions for how you want the money to be used. You want to place restrictions on how it's accessed and how it's invested and how it's ultimately returned if capital is borrowed and secured, of course. Why is something that is so important, why is this rarely contemplated or thought about when it comes to putting together an estate plan? Well, it's because it is complicated. And as you start to think about it, it becomes overcomplicated. So I think if you think again about the big picture, about future generations, about your family values, about what's important to you, and you write those down, you'll find that that doesn't take a lot to put that down on paper. It's a good framework for you to start the process. When you start this process, there seems to be, again, a lot of choices, and you both, meaning you and your spouse, should certainly be on the same page when it comes to this, because you may have some ideas about certain things and he or she may have ideas about how other things go. And so first you need to agree on that, because after all, you do live in a community property state. So you got to make sure that community is on the same page. Ask yourself, is your current plan, is it addressing the needs and wants of the community for the future? That's what we're discussing today. And if you haven't started or you haven't thought about this or your plan, like the clients I mentioned in the beginning, for the last 5 years, well then chances are you are exposed right now. As you know, the big beautiful bill, tax laws are going to change in the future. And in California, we have a capital gains tax right now that is 14.5% if there's over $1 million of income in a transaction. So if you have real estate, you have stock options, you have things that are going to transfer in generations, you could be sitting on a tax time bomb right now. And that's why it's very important to look at this proactively, to have a team together that can put it in writing, can show you what are your choices and where does it make sense to start converting different things. If you're not looking at that ahead of time, you're really going to do yourself some disservice. So if you have rental properties or real estate that you're trying to figure out how to deal with this Prop 19 and the new issues that are here in California, you can get straight answers right now from our team by getting your hands on my retirement checklist. Now, this is a free document. It is in a PDF, and we can email that to you right now to give you a framework to start thinking about. How do you get that? Well, pick up the phone right now and call this number, 866-PROTECT, you can talk to a member of my team right now. They are sitting here ready to help you. 866-PROTECT, and to send out this retirement checklist. Call right now and get your checklist. 866-PROTECT, 866-776-8328. Coming up next, it's time for our popular They Say segment, where we'll discuss how keeping secrets from your family might not be the most beneficial decision when it comes to your retirement plan. It's all coming up next, so stick around.
Take the first step toward reaching your financial goals and get the information that can help you live a confident retirement. That first step is going to PYAevents.com and signing up for our next free event. That's PYAevents.com. Now, back to Protect Your Assets with David Hollander, the Sandman.
Welcome back. I am David Hollander, also known as the Sandman, and you are listening this morning to Protect Your Assets. People around here, they call me the Sandman because I help people keep more of what they work so hard for. And this past week, I had Ken and Susan in my office, and we were talking about them passing wealth on to their kids and grandkids and how their values wanted to keep their wealth throughout multiple generations to come, people they have never met before. So if you're just joining us and one of your financial goals is keeping wealth in your family for generations, with those generations spending the money in ways that are important to your family values, then today's show is just for you, because you need to develop a plan to figure out how to do this. Because there's this thing out there called the third generation curse, which basically says that once the third generation gets to the money, there's nothing left. Go back and take a look at the Vanderbilts. Remember, the Vanderbilts were a very wealthy family who you will see squandered their wealth through limited generations, and it's pretty much gone when you compare it to the Rockefellers, who've managed to do it so well for over 7 generations with billions of dollars in their funds continuing to grow, because they did it right. So if you're wondering how you would do that, how you would solve this puzzle, well, then you're at the right place today as we discuss multi-generational wealth planning and how do you do that. Now it's time for one of our fan favorite parts of the show. This is our They Say segment, where we debunk common myths, half-truths, and sometimes bad advice that they say.
Who are they? What do they know that I don't? And what are they saying this week? Here's David Hollander, the Sandman's answer.
All I know is that I don't know.
All right, so here's one they say. They say that I don't want my kids to know about all of the wealth that we've accumulated because it could change our relationship with our kids. Is there a way this common mindset could backfire in creating multi-generational wealth? Well, definitely. The third consideration, remember last segment we were talking about things that you should consider. One of them was, remember, thinking about not specific people, but the future, people that you haven't met that are going to be in your family, and how would you let them know about what was important to you today, right? So the blind theory, that's one. The second was writing things down, your family values. And the third consideration that I think you need to be open about and think about is to be open with your current family, your kids and grandkids that are alive right now, about your assets and your intentions. Let's look through this. In general, people tend to live as if their money, their beliefs, their values, and their wishes are a secret. And they miss the opportunity to communicate the knowledge and the wisdom that you've gained all your life to your kids and grandkids. To have a generational plan, remember, this is different than your traditional living trust, which people call an estate plan. You cannot have a mindset that just assumes everyone in the family knows what you know. and that they will learn what you do through osmosis. Many of our clients do this. They just go about their lives doing what they're doing, and they think their kids are going to pick up on these things through some transference of observing. Yes, that's important, but your children may have seen these things, may have a good education, may have a successful career, but that does not mean that they understand financial or generational planning as it relates to what you want. It is your responsibility to offer guidance and leadership to the family so they know what to do when you pass away. I have had clients in my office literally in tears over the fact that their parents will not communicate anything with them. In some cases, there's no guidance being offered for managing the inheritance that's coming their way, and the heirs have to wait until their parents die to learn what's going on. There could be a number of reasons for the situation. Some holders of wealth either don't care what happens after they pass away, or simply they do not want to deal with having the conversation. If that's you, then the idea of generational planning may not be for you. And that's okay, because it is your money after all, and you can do whatever you want with it. But for those who do care about generational planning, about that generation you have not met, that will be here someday, this is an opportunity for you to bring your family together, to create a vision for wealth that you have and outline that vision of a family legacy for your family. This can spark all sorts of discussions and conversations about what your family stands for, what values you want to pass on, what things mean to you, how money is to be used, what strategies do you have in place, and you can outline together what to expect as one generation dies and a new one is born. I know this could create possibly some conflict because there may be some disagreement about what you want and what they want. But remember, this is your money. So in a sense, you can dictate what's going to happen to it by bringing them in the conversation. At least they're aware of it, and you can find out what sort of concerns they might have. This does have the potential to pave the way for each family member to understand what their role and their responsibility will be to perpetuate your legacy. One area that I see this come up a lot is in family businesses. I have a lot of clients who own different types of businesses that have been very successful, and these businesses continue to do well and to grow. And so to think about that business for the future generation and generations of people that may work there, how do you do that? How do you set that up where that can run efficiently and still look very much like it does today, and keeping the culture with the way you want it to be, which is important to everybody who works there? Because you've set up a trust, it basically does not mean, I've rarely seen this, that your business or your real estate portfolio or a large stock account, that it's going to go on forever, because the reality is the estate tax. The estate tax will currently eat up everything that's over $13.2 million in wealth. Yes, if you're married, you can double that, but after that, that's it. There's going to be a 40% estate tax that's coming, and if you're looking at some large capital gain potential, unless there's a step up, you could have a real problem. So if this is the sort of thing that you're dealing with and you're wanting to continue on that business or that legacy, you need to develop what's called a business continuity plan as part of your multi-generational strategy. Again, if this is important to you and your family, you want to look at the tax considerations. You want to think about the management protocol. You want to look at revenue distribution to your family members who may stick with that business, who may be involved in it. And of course, you want to maximize the value of the company and preserve that. Don't be short-sighted when it comes to this. It is worth the time and energy you're going to spend with your professional team. This has to include an estate planning attorney who is skilled in these sort of matters. In some cases, you may have multiple attorneys who deal with the business interest and the legacy interest and the tax interest. It's not uncommon to have multiple members on your team advising you on how to protect and preserve your wealth for generations to come. Again, looking at families that have done it well, go study the Rockefellers. They have seemed to put this together, and it's still working very, very well. If you've lived long enough, you've probably had a stress test from your doctor, or maybe you know someone who has. You know, it's that medieval torture device where you run uphill with wires attached with stickies on your chest. Feels like super glue. That's the one. What's the doctor doing? Why are they doing that? Well, they're looking to see how your body reacts to physical stress to determine if your heart is okay. Well, we can do the same thing when it comes to your estate. With our tax, legal, and financial team, we look at all the things that can go wrong when you think about how your estate will practically go through the transition from one generation to the next, and then the next, and then the next, if that's what's important to you. And if you're not looking at that and you haven't stress tested it, you think everything's okay, then you most likely got a problem, and you're not going to get a second opinion from the person who gave you the first opinion. We can send you right now via PDF a quick checklist that's absolutely complimentary to see what you may not know. Call this number right now, 866-776-8328 to get yours. Call my team. We're here right now, ready to help you. 866-776-8328. Coming up next on Protect Your Assets, want to find out ways to keep your assets growing for generations to come? Stay with us. We'll be right back.
If you missed any of Protect Your Assets with David Hollander, all you have to do is go to pyaradio.com, where you can download or listen to our latest shows for free. Just go to pyaradio.com on your computer or mobile device when it's most convenient for you. That's pyaradio.com. Now, back to Protect Your Assets with David Hollander, the Sandman.
Welcome back to Protect Your Assets. I am David Hollander, and people around here, they call me the Sandman, and that's because I help you hang on to more of what's yours. And this week's no different, as we're talking about how to keep money in your family for generations, particularly if you have the kind of wealth that can pass on to generation. But there's a problem if you get into this and research it. It's called the third generation curse. And that is basically 90% of families lose all of their money by the third generation because of planning. And so if you've done it right, and this morning we were talking about the 3 different ways to think about putting something together like this. It doesn't have to be that difficult. We've been covering it this morning about how to do it. So if you missed any of the show, go back and check out our podcast as I outlined for you what you need to know, what you need to do. Anywhere you get your podcast, you just type in Protect Your Assets, and you can take a look at the Generational Wealth Show. If you like it, please share it with a friend. Getting back to today's topic, we're talking about generational wealth. And when you think of money and growing wealth, the tendency is to assume that investments are the primary driver behind the strategy. However, when it comes to generational planning, a specifically designed whole life insurance policy, it's a different type of policy, it's called a whole life insurance policy, can be a primary catalyst for growing and protecting assets while also providing access to cash. The reason these contracts are so effective when it comes to multi-generational planning is due to the risk mitigation characteristics of this policy and the trusts that go along with creating them. If you design these properly, they can have guarantees that are backed by the claims paying ability of those companies that have results which are proven to last for generations. These are predictable results that one generation can pass on to the next generation. And these are the ways that many of these families create wealth over multiple generations. What are some of the things you should consider when you look at this? Well, first of all, there's a guaranteed death benefit. Typically, life insurance policies like these have a death benefit that is guaranteed to pay a large tax-free lump sum at a person's death without the need for taking any market risk whatsoever. This death benefit has a multiplying effect because it's bought using discounted dollars. The total death benefit is usually much greater than the total premiums paid in. Once the policy owner passes away, within that first generation, the death benefit then goes on to purchase new life insurance policies on select people through the next generations, creating new wealth for generations and generations to come. The other ability that these provide is the access to cash. You can have specific designs in these type of policies where the earned cash value can be accessed through something called a policy loan. These loans are tax-free currently, and the generations have access to this cash and can use it to fund things like business or business expansion or education or charities and things like that. So all of these should be thought about as you create your plan. There are two parts that make up the cash value. You have things that are dividends. These can be guaranteed at current high interest rates. I talked about interest rates at the top of the show. Rates are very good right now, and these rates are available where you could look at also lower mortality costs that are out there right now. By combining these two very powerful forces, the total cash value, which accumulates over time, is consistent and can be predictable once you lock in these current rates. So check this strategy out as one way to reduce overall market risk and volatility concerns and provide predictable growth and consistent outcomes as you develop your plans. Of course, these sort of strategies are not a unicorn, and there could be problems. So make sure you look at the income and growth on cash values. Look at the taxes that could be associated with that if you took it out as a withdrawal as opposed to a loan. Also, there are potential adverse tax consequences that could result if the withdrawals exceeded the premiums that were paid into the policy. There are also things known as surrender charges you should be aware of. Also, another one is called a MEC, a modified endowment classification. Make sure you know what that is and how it's triggered and how it works. Additional premiums also could be required. So there's no doubt that these decisions are complex, and that as the current tax laws unfold, we know we have the big beautiful bill that's coming. What does that mean over the next couple years, and how will that affect your generational planning? Well, get in front of that now. Find out what tax laws are coming and how you can make decisions now to lock in and protect your family's future. It all comes with sitting down with an attorney, a tax advisor, and a financial professional. We have those at the Liberty Group. We are a multi-generational team that brings you boutique-like professional service. Get your complimentary review right now. Get our checklist to find out what are the things you should be thinking about right now as you put together your plan for generations to come to protect your family. It is as simple as picking up the phone and dialing this number, 866-PROTECT. You can connect with us right now. Our folks are standing by on the phone right now to help you today, 866-776-8328. We will email you that PDF, that retirement checklist to get started on these questions. 866-776-8328, 866-PROTECT. So if you have questions and you want answers, or you just want to find out how to start the conversation, call us now, 866-PROTECT. I'd like to give a big thanks to the Protect Your Assets team for putting together a great show today. My executive producer, Kevin Renford, network manager, Raf, and of course, all of my fabulous producers back there helping out this morning. You got Phil, Dylan, Zach, Lucas, and Nick. Because without my team, I'm just another pretty voice on the radio. Thanks again, everybody. You've been listening to the Protect Your Assets show. I am David Hollander, the Sandman. Have a great long weekend. Go out and make the rest of your life the best of your life.
Investment advisory services are offered through Liberty Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. The strategies mentioned are not suitable for everyone. The information expressed does not consider your specific situation or objectives and may not be appropriate for all investors. Past performance is not indicative of future results. To better understand the risk associated with investing and how it reacts to different market conditions, listeners should always consult with their qualified investment professionals, financial advisors, legal or tax specialists, and conduct their due diligence before making any financial decisions or taking any action. The legal information provided on the air is not intended to substitute for callers hiring their lawyers to advise them about personal legal matters. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Liberty Group LLC paid for the following program, and the host's views and opinions do not represent those of the station or its ownership. California Life Agent number 048569. Persons engaging the services of one affiliate of Liberty Group LLC companies should be aware that each company is operated separately. You're listening to the Protect Your Assets Radio Network.